Wolverine is an old man in his new film Logan, where he befriends a young girl named X-23. Here's a quick look at the movie.
Logan, what did you do?
Charles, the world is not the same as it was. Mutants. They're gone now.
I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real.
What is she?
Beneath the stains
She's like you.
of time,
Very much like you.
the feelings disappear.
She needs our help.
You are
Someone will come along.
someone else.
Someone has come along.
I am still right here, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. I would keep myself. I would find a way.
Logan, you still have time.
In Logan, it takes place in an alternate timeline to the X-Men universe, where Wolverine is probably the only person in the remaining original timeline from Days of Future Past. And in this alternate timeline, Logan is an old man, and he's one of the very few mutants that's left in society. And Professor Xavier, who's also a big part of the X-Men franchise, is also one of the last remaining mutants as well. But when they find out about a character named X-23, who was a young child who was once a part of this laboratory experiment where they were kind of treated like prisoners in a jail, but they're more so mutants that are treated in a very unusual certain way, where she escapes this laboratory by chance. And this is kind of her opportunity to find freedom with Logan and with Professor Xavier. So the three of them take this big road trip. Wolverine's biggest concern of all, since he's an old man, he really doesn't have a lot of time left as far as his own life is concerned. He really wants to make sure that X-23 is in safe hands, that she's in a safe place, that she's potentially in a place where if other mutants come along, this is where she's going to meet up with some of those mutants as well. So throughout the course of this film, Wolverine and Professor Xavier are on this road trip. They're trying to be safe as well, but for the most part, they really have to make sure that this young girl, X-23, or Laura as they call her, is safer than the three of them combined. So overall, Logan is a very strong X-Men film. It's actually Hugh Jackman's reported last time playing the Wolverine character, and if it is, he definitely ended this role with a bang. He really nailed the Wolverine character over this many years where X-Men films were made. He continues to play the Wolverine character, and this might be one of his best performances as the character of Wolverine. So for my positives and negatives of Logan, the character of X-23 is a very fun, new entry character in the X-Men universe. If the reported X-23 spin-off movie does happen, I really hope that it does, just because X-23 is a very fun character that surprisingly doesn't say a lot, but when she does, it kind of adds to her own unique personality that she brings into this movie, and it creates a very unique film experience, not just because, you know, Wolverine is an interesting character and we find out what happens with Professor Xavier later on in his life, but now we have X-23 who's also very interesting and brings a lot of fun to the franchise as well. This film also has tons of excellent performances. Like I said, this really is probably Hugh Jackman's best time playing the Wolverine character. He's just having a blast with the role. A very dramatic performance. He has very little hope in society left, and whatever is left with his hope, it's with an X-23 and Professor Xavier and people who are trying to protect mutants the best they can, since there's really not a lot of mutants left in this future. And it's just excellent performances all across the board as far as acting goes in Logan. This film also has great drama and great action. Whenever something sad happens, you really start to tear up. You really feel sorry for these characters in some of these scenes. When something happy happens, when something funny happens, there's scenes where just regular everyday people invite some of these mutants into their house to have dinner with them. There's just very refreshing drama like this that reminds you that, you know, these mutants are just like everybody else. They just want to live their life. They want to pursue a job. They want to have families. They want to do things that any human being would want to do. So this film has great action and drama, and all of this lives up to a very great movie. But for my negatives of Logan, some of the story details are a little messy. There is a scene where us as the audience are trying to figure out how X-23 did escape this laboratory, how Wolverine was able to track down this girl and, you know, provide her to safety and so forth. But some of the details as far as how she escaped this laboratory, how this laboratory video got filmed, even though it's claimed to be, you know, very classified, you know, within the government, nobody should know about the laboratory kind of thing. So you kind of wonder how this video where Wolverine and us as the audience do find out more about X-23. So there's certain details like that that do feel a little messy. There's also some scenes in this movie that feel a little too long for their own good. I think some editing in the cutting room floor of this movie would have definitely helped this film. There's a place they go to in this movie called Eden, and unfortunately a lot of the scenes in Eden feel a little too long for their own good. There's a lot of scenes in Eden that involve characters outside of Wolverine and X-23 and the characters we really do truly care about in this franchise that really could have benefited from some shorter footage, some, you know, more cleaning up in the editing room. So some scenes in this movie do feel a little too long for their own good. And also another thing to note about Logan is this is probably the most down X-Men movie we've ever had. It's just very sad. There's just a lot of scenes where we really don't feel good about humanity. We don't feel good about where mutants end up in the future and so forth. So it is a very down film, but go into this movie knowing that it's very dramatic, it's very rewarding, and, you know, Hugh Jackman playing this character for so long was just so rewarding and refreshed to see. And if this is his final performance, he definitely ended this role with a bang. So I'm going to give Logan a 9 out of 10. It's a very strong movie. It's probably not the best X-Men film we've ever had, but it's definitely one of the better X-Men films in a very long time. So 9 out of 10 for me. Next up on the show, we're going to talk about Kong Skull Island, where we return to Skull Island with the King Kong character.
An uncharted island.
Let me list all the ways you're gonna die. Rain, heat, disease-carrying flies, and we haven't started on the things that want to eat you alive.
We'll double that.
Plus a bonus if we make it back. If?
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine.
Is that a monkey?
He's God on the island.
We don't belong here.
But the devils live below us. I call them skull crawlers. Why? Because it sounds neat.
Okay.
Look, I just made that name up. I'm trying to scare you.
I'm fine calling them that. Are you cool with it?
Yeah, that seems like a
I
good,
like the name.
In this film reboot of Kong Skull Island, we now take place in the 1970s where the new King Kong storyline does take place, unlike the original one where it took place, around the 30s or 40s or somewhere around that timeline. So in this new film, a military team is asked to go to this uncharted island that gets funding from a small organization known as Monarch. For those who saw the 2014 Godzilla film, you know what Monarch is all about. So they get funding to go to this uncharted island. The people who run Monarch claim that there is creatures there and, things that we could study for biological purposes that haven't been researched yet, that a lot of scientists back in America would like to research further to further understand our planet. So they go there, they have this military team, but they encounter a giant gorilla named King Kong that they weren't aware that wasn't going to be there, because all the creatures that they were aware of beforehand were some of the smaller, lesser known creatures that probably weren't as big or as threatening as the King Kong character was. So while they're on Skull Island, they do find out that King Kong is kind of this protector of this island, that unlike these other monsters that are basically out to get anybody that enters the island, and that anybody can be their dinner and so forth, unlike King Kong, King Kong is there to protect people. There's a small village there that Kong is kind of the god and protector of. So throughout the course of this movie, they have to figure out how to survive this island, how they can bring back this research back to America the way that they were originally intending to, and also trying to figure out, is Kong really an anti-hero, or is he just going to eat them for dinner like all the other monsters on this island? So overall, Kong Skull Island was a very strong movie, I thought, as well. It definitely reintroduced us to the character of King Kong in a way we haven't seen him yet. This is also the first King Kong film that almost entirely takes place on Skull Island, with the exception of maybe the first 25-30 minutes where they're setting up the story. But for the most part, Kong is on Skull Island for most of the movie, and so are these characters. So for my positives and negatives of Kong Skull Island, this is the best looking Skull Island we've had in a long time. I like how when I left this movie, I could really explain to somebody what Skull Island was like, how it was very warm, how it's loaded with forests and swamps, and if you're not careful, you can run into monsters of all kinds that really have no problem taking you down if you're entering their territory in the wrong way. So I like how interactive and how visually invested I felt within the Skull Island environment for this movie. These are also amazing visual effects. So whenever you see King Kong in this movie, whenever you see Kong battling a giant monster in this movie, whenever you see human characters interacting with this island, or interacting with Kong himself, or interacting with these other monsters, or escaping from these other monsters, these visual effects are very believable. So Jordan Vogt Roberts, who directed this film and also directed a smaller film called Kings of Summer, if he decides to direct more visually big budget films like this, I think he would do a great job with such projects, because in this film alone, he really handles these visual effects in very strong ways. I also liked how this film very much took inspiration from the film Apocalypse Now. Whenever these characters are on a swamp or looking through forests, or bombs are going off or whatever, it really does kind of have that look and tone of Apocalypse Now. It just has that Vietnam War, stuck in this jungle kind of a look and tone to it, like Apocalypse Now did, and it really benefits. I think Kong Skull Island is probably one of the more visually appealing Kong films we've had in a long time. But for my negatives of Kong Skull Island, even though I was invested in some of these human characters and I really was invested in King Kong, some of these characters feel very boring and flat. Some of these characters I just really didn't feel invested in. I didn't learn enough about their background. I just didn't feel enough as an audience to really care about some of these characters. So if some of them died or if some of them got hurt, some of them I just didn't care about, just because they're just not very well developed, and I really was not given a reason as someone as the audience to really have feelings for these characters. And then speaking of characters, another thing I had with this movie that I didn't really like too much is some of the character actions in this film are kind of dumb. For example, when they first get to Skull Island, they're trying to figure out what they can do and what these animals are comfortable with and what they're uncomfortable with and so forth. Somebody thinks it's a great idea to just start dropping bombs everywhere and make everything explode. And it's just like, why would someone do that? If they're really in uncharted territory, is their first thing on their mind to make everything explode and make everything die? It's just like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then my last negative of Kong Skull Island is I feel like every celebrity that's in this film, like John Goodman or Brie Larson or Tom Hiddleston, I feel like some of them are in the movie as long as they are just because they're famous, and by getting rid of some of these characters as soon as you would, that would kind of ruin the appeal to this film for audiences, because people are familiar with some of these actors and actresses from other films. So some of the celebrity fame got a little too dominant in this movie, and that's really too bad. I think Kong Skull Island could have benefited from a script that really wasn't afraid to take more risks. But overall, I'm going to give Kong Skull Island an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very strong film. It's probably not the very best Kong film we've ever had. I think the original one is still the best one, but it's still a very good time, and it's a very visually appealing movie. So for my last movie on the show, I'm going to be talking about House of the Devil for our Hidden Gem segment.
I can tell you like it.
I love it. It's perfect. About the deposit?
I'll agree to waive all the deposit stuff. You just give me the first month's down, we'll call it a day, all right? It's hard coming up with all that money, isn't it?
It's gonna work out.
You're not the one with $84 in a bank account and a check to write on Monday.
You know what you should do?
Hi. I'm calling in regards to the babysitter flyer posted outside my dorm.
Tonight's big eclipse is now well underway.
I feel a little weird just dropping you out here, like in the middle of wherever we are.
You have to forgive me, Samantha, because I've not been completely honest.
We're from the desert, you know.
You see, we actually don't have a child.
They lied to you.
I know.
They're liars.
Okay, I know you're right. But it's $400. This equals first month's rent and then some, and all I have to do is sit inside and watch TV. This is huge. This one night changes everything for me.
Here we go.
Are you not the babysitter?
Oh my God! Talk to me, Lord. Talk to me.
So the reason I chose The House of the Devil for this Hidden Gem segment is I really feel that this is a film that more people should see. I really think true fans of the horror genre and people who loved, horror films from the 1980s like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, or, I know The Exorcist didn't come out in the 80s, but, films like that, I think would really enjoy this movie. It really does look and feel like something that came out of the 1980s. For a quick synopsis of this film, it's about a girl that is trying to look for an apartment as she's finishing up college, and she finds out about this babysitting job that does pay a lot of money if she were to pursue it. And when she gets to this house, it's very etchy. The people who run this house are very kind of scary, and she finds out that they want her to just watch the house and not so much a person like a child or anything. So she takes the job anyway, only to find out that there's more to this job than what was originally written down on paper. So for my positives and negatives of House of the Devil and why I recommend this as a hidden gem is this film builds suspense very, very well. This is probably one of the best suspense building I've seen in a horror film in a very long time, even though this film came out in roughly 2009 in America, I believe. This film just really knows how to build suspense. It really keeps you guessing throughout the course of the runtime, and it's a really great film to watch as a result. And once again, I do like how this film looks and feels like a 1980s film. They actually did find video cameras from the 80s. They got 80s clothing, any way, shape, or form where they can make this look like it was happening and filmed in the 1980s. Director Ty West did everything in his power to make sure that everything looked like this. They also used more makeup effects than usual, more so than CGI, just to really, like I said, really make it feel like a 1980s film. Because back then, if you wanted a creature in your film, you had to do it through makeup and costumes, while in 2017, you can probably just CGI that character in. So I like how Ty West goes the practical route in this movie. This film also plays around with darkness very well. There's a lot of scenes where either the power goes out or this girl is in this house and she doesn't know how to get a light source in the house or anything. So it plays around with darkness really well. There's scenes where you really don't know if there's something in that room, or there's something in the backyard, or there's something outside of the house watching here. There's just so many scenes that plays around with the darkness, and it's a very scary experience as a result. But for my negatives of House of the Devil, there are some character actions in this film that are a little stupid. There's scenes where it's just like, okay, so all this horrible stuff happened to you so far in this house, and you're willing to go that stupid route for that stupid action right there. So there's small things like that are a little dumb. And there's also some scenes where the suspense building goes on for so long to the point where it's building up a false jump scare, like a cat jumping around in a trash can outside or something like that. But like I said, whenever the suspense does build up to something that really is scary, because I would say the third act of this film is, balls to the wall, loaded with scary moments, which really is kind of the savior of this movie, is just the fact that there's so many great practical things done with this movie. So overall, I'm going to give House of the Devil a 9 out of 10. If you can find it on Netflix, if you can find it on Amazon, it's worth your time and money. It's a great nod to 1980s horror films. I'll see you back here in April for the next episode of Screen Time.